Well, folks, it's time to sit up again for another episode of the Soul Sessions. I'm your host, Soul, but with me today, the jaw rocker, the head roller, the Ayatollah of rock and roller, Freddie Idle. Welcome, my friend, to the Soul Sessions.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for
Oh,
having
absolute,
me.
yeah, it's my absolute pleasure, Freddie. I always love having a rock star here, but I want to ask, Freddie, as I do with every guest, every guest has a story and every story has a beginning. Freddie, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
I think it's probably the same for a lot of people here. SmackDown versus Raw. Uh,
Oh,
Back when I was a kid, I think I got into wrestling like a little bit later than some people. Like I wasn't. I know a lot of people get into it like they're really young. I think I was probably like 12, 13 because I think up until that point, like I'd always grown up, like without a lot of people around me interested in it. Nothing they really said to sort of sold me on it. And then one day I was around the mates and I started playing. I think it was SmackDown versus Raw 2009,
oh,
um, and it just gripped me. I remember I think just seeing like some of the wrestlers and like the Undertaker, Rey Mysterio in particular. I think were the two that really sort of sold me. Was like, wow, this is actually like a really incredible, exciting thing. And then through that, like I started watching wrestling with him. I started picking up watching it more at home. Um, I think that sort of passion came from, like I said, I think it's when I started. There's always like a few wrestlers you really hook onto.
mm-hmm.
For me, like I said, the starters Mysterio and Undertaker, John Morrison as well. Right about when I started watching was when he won the IC title off Rey Mysterio, and I remember seeing him hit a Starship Pain and just seeing I'd never seen anyone like move like that in my life, and it like blew my mind. And from there I went, throughout my teenage years went on watching it, up until I think just sadly just before sort of the Yes movement, Daniel Bryan. I stopped watching just before that, which always guts me a little bit because I missed out on that absolute spectacle. So I had a few years out of it. I kind of fell out of love with like Raw and SmackDown. Um, and the time I was watching Impacts a lot as well, and I think Aces and Eights had just started, and I think
Oh,
it's around the same time. So I kind of fell out of love with it for a few years, and then a few years later, I heard about a little developmental brand called NXT, and I saw Samoa Joe had just joined there. I was like, well, he was one of my favorite wrestlers. Why not give this a try? And then that brought me straight back in, watching like him, Balor especially, just have these insane matches. Sort of reignited that love for wrestling, and it's kind of been sort of non-stop since then, really.
well, fair play, my friend. Fair play indeed. I want to go back and touch upon those games, the SmackDown Raw games, because I've had a few
Mm.
guests. They talk about they were so influential for them getting into the business and learning about wrestling. Obviously, the SmackDown Raw games would transition to the 2K games, and they're doing okay just now. But I want to know from yourself, Freddie, as a fan of those games, do you think they're missing something, not taking advantage of the Raw and SmackDown history games? Maybe thinking, let's go back and do one of them.
I think for me, it's like I think I kind of for me, I really enjoy like story stuff in games, and I think wrestling as like an art form is like so story driven that I kind of miss like the road to WrestleManias in them. And the stories in them were so like they were so ridiculous at times. Like the Master Attacker coming up and um, attacking Edge, um, all the weird mystical stuff at the Undertaker. Like it's all like kind of nonsense, but so much of wrestling is, and it. I feel like they really took that side of wrestling, that fun, wacky, nonsensical craziness, and brought that into like a video game. And even though it wasn't, maybe like a realistic interpretation of what wrestling stories are like, I feel like I really kind of got like the spirit and like the fun of wrestling. So I think that's something I really miss.
Mm.
Um, so that's definitely one thing. Also, like sometimes I don't think I'm as big a fan of where they can get a bit too much like a sort of trying to simulate
Mm.
as much. I think I got to a point where it was like I was trying to put together like all these combos and stuff, and it's just so clunky. It just wasn't. I think I quite like the kind of, although I like the direction they've kind of gone back in now, where they sort of feel a bit more arcadey. Um, and that might just be because now I'm actually wrestling. I kind of think like, well, I don't need a simulator. Like, like if your hobby was sailing, like you don't necessarily want to like go out on a lake and then come home and do a complex game about rigging up a sail. Like, so I like the fact they're going back in like an arcadey kind of direction. I think that's something I definitely enjoy more.
No, of course, fair play, my friend. Obviously, those Road to WrestleMania stories are quite iconic in themselves. You know, I remember there was one that was two-player with Ray and Batista.
Oh yeah, with Ray and Batista.
And there was Taker, Shawn Michaels had one. I'm sure Punk had one as well. I want to know, what's your favorite Road to WrestleMania story in these SmackDown Raw games?
One I've got a couple. I think the one you actually mentioned with Punk I quite liked, because I quite like that he was like at the time he was kind of like that more like underground character and a more like underground guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one I look back at with more fondness now, like with more like years like watching wrestling. The fact that it was about like him fighting like ECW legends, and like the final match was like with Taz. That just has such a different feel to like all of the other ones to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's definitely one that I've got a lot of love for. There was a really good one as well. I think it was a Triple H one as well. Because since these were like my introduction to wrestling, there was a lot of things from wrestling I hadn't like heard of. And the Triple H one was basically centered around him either reuniting with Shawn Michaels in DX or with Orton, Batista, and Flair in Evolution. And that was actually like my introduction to those two stables.
Oh, wow.
Which it's just a bit of a weird one when I like say that out loud. But I always kind of like remember that, and that's the first time I ever saw anything at DX. So that's kind of got like a special place, I think, as well in my heart.
No, of course, absolutely. All great stories, and fans love to play them because people go back to these games forever and ever, just replaying memories they had. Now, also, you mentioned you kind of fallen out with love of wrestling, but then came back because of the old black and gold NXT brand. So actually, I want you to educate me a bit, Freddie, because I got into wrestling in 2019, so I didn't actually experience, the whole black and gold NXT, going up now. So as a fan of that time period of NXT, why do you think it was so special for wrestling fans?
I think it felt different for one. I think one of the things, for example, I'm not as big a fan of with like the current like SmackDown and Raw, like in terms of their presentation, is they almost feel like too overproduced. Whereas like WWE, I think a lot of people would say nowadays is very much trying to sell themselves based on like the brand rather than like individual stars. Anytime you look at the screen, I feel like you're so bombarded with this big bright banner, lights across the bottom WWE. There's lights on the posts, so the crowd's lit up so you can see what's happening. I feel like that for me takes so much away from like what's happening in the ring. So having like this sort of darker look around everything kind of focused on that in-ring action, and in-ring action that felt different from WWE. It was like that hybrid of like WWE and like more indie style. I guess it just kind of felt like it had a lot of the stuff that I kind of loved watching, like Impact, for example, like those kind of styles. Because I think at that age, that was the closest I ever got to watching any kind of like indie stuff. So it had the kind of that different style influences I liked from that. It had this different presentation that just felt like it was really about all the action. And for me, that made everyone like, even in like this smaller venue, everyone kind of felt like a bigger, more important star to me, I think. Because it was like the attention was all on them. It wasn't as much about this product around them. It was about them coming up and fighting through. I think that just really stood out to me. And also, they just had some absolutely amazing guys there at the time. Like, so I started watching just after Sami Zayn. So I missed him. I missed Cesaro in there. But when I started, like I said, it was Finn Balor, and as himself and the Demon, Kenta or Hideo Itami. He was going by at the time. Him as well. First time I seen Asuka. Nakamura debuting like within that year as well. It was just I also kind of felt like it was a much since they were bringing all these new guys that kind of go on to change that WWE style a bit. It also felt you had like a much more sort of diverse range of wrestlers. Like they all felt a lot more a lot. They didn't all feel like they fit that typical WWE mold. It felt like it had a much wider range of people. There was just so much about it that just kind of like drew me in. It felt like it did kind of feel like this is like the ground floor of like the next sort of 10 years of wrestling.
No, of course. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just like a really exciting, just a really exciting brand. Also,
oh,
match quality as well. Just it was great.
a truly banging time NXT was in that black and gold era. When I learned about it and started learning about, who was in it, four names always came up. Cole, Strong, O'Reilly, and Fish.
Yeah,
Undisputed era. When I was learning, they always come up. And I ended up having Bobby Fish on this show and talking to him about NXT. Bobby stated that he felt like Undisputed Era was like the pillars of NXT. Like they were the guys, always there putting on the bangers and, being the representation for that brand of NXT. As a fan, Ferry, do you agree with that? Or do you think there were maybe other great stars as well that helped being pillars for NXT?
I think they were definitely a pillar for a long time. Yeah, like you said, that match quality around them was fantastic. But I think one of the things about NXT that made it so exciting was you had a lot of different people coming through and moving on to the main roster. So I think I find it hard to pin down any kind of individual pillars because that kind of rotating pool of talent. But yeah, Undisputed Era, I think it got to be one like the longest in terms of like length of time in there. Length of time without getting stale as well. Are definitely a big part of that. Everything they did, whether like they were holding all the gold, feuding amongst themselves. Yeah, I think it's fair to say they're definitely, if you're going to like rank like the best parts of that period of NXT, they definitely like. It's hard to put them on their own. They're saying like, oh, any one of them was the best individual star, any team was the best individual team. But they were just, they were such a major highlight, and like, it's a shame that they didn't go on to do more in WWE. But they're all doing. Looks like they're on to doing great things elsewhere. So the wrestling world's still benefiting, I guess. This is the main thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, wherever you go, the wrestling world is going to benefit from it. And obviously, NXT was on the network before, but then it was moved to USA and would have that whole Wednesday night war of AEW. And that time period, I felt was kind of exciting. Everyone was like, "Oh, what's the ratings? What's they pulled? What's happening there?" But I know some fans were a bit hesitant, like, "Oh, it made this NXT special because it was on the network." Didn't seem to overproduced. As a fan, Freddie, again, do you feel it was a smart move moving it off the network, or do you think maybe its charm was lost?
I think it's a hard one because at the time, one thing I enjoyed about that was I got an extra hour of NXT every week. And at the time, you still did have like, your Undisputed Era was still a part of it. My timelines are terrible in my head for this kind of thing, but I feel like the talent at the time was so strong. And they had so many people coming in. For me, I kind of took it as like, well, now you've got this extra hour to showcase everyone. So I think for me watching it, I enjoyed that. And in terms of like whether it was smart to move it, I was still watching it on the network. I don't think I've ever tried to like follow the ratings of stuff or anything like that. But I think anything in wrestling that kind of like pushes between like two companies where they're trying to push each other, outdo each other in rating, try and put on a better show. I think competition always like breeds success really. So whether it was a smart move for them or not, I don't know. Obviously, you could say AEW is beating them in the ratings, but it's not really. They're not really two comparable things, I guess. NXT was a developmental brand. AEW were beating them with their main flagship show. So whether or not it was smart, I don't know. But the fact that NXT is still around, I guess, means it can't be that bad. Or I guess it's around in a different form. So. I whatever the reasons that they changed up NXT, I don't think would have been down to that. I think there were other sort of maybe issues or things that kind of needed changing with them. But what I think they've evolved to now, even though I don't really kind of follow the current NXT, if you look at like, the caliber of stars they kind of produced, your Bron Breakers, your Carmelo Hayes, your Tiffany Strattons, you can see like how well their new formula kind of works for them. So I think if it's led WWE to this, ultimately, then you kind of have to consider that a success, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously change is good, I think. If you try one thing for too long, it can get a bit stale. And sometimes change is a good risk because you never know what you're going to succeed. Obviously, NXT would take its risk going for its 2.0, what I like to call the Skittles era, the old multicolor sort of thing. But now it's came back to its kind of black and white kind of era now. And it's putting on banger matches with the No Mercy, Trixie Stratton, Becky Lynch. But I want to look back at that 2.0 era. Do you think that was just maybe a wee blip, but a necessary change to get the product we're getting now?
I think it's kind of like a transitional era.
Mm.
I think it's not. I think at the time, I kind of fell off it because suddenly went from this program where there was like loads of stars I was kind of invested in. You had like UK kind of talent starting to come through, people who I'd like seen in wrestling, like Progress and stuff like that. So you kind of went from that, all these stars that we kind of knew and were excited for, to a bunch of people that we had no idea who they were, who still were only just starting to learn to wrestle. But I think they needed that time to get to where they are now, because all those people that they brought in, they were all incredible athletes, incredible performers, and by bringing in those people with like such fantastic raw material to become a wrestler, and then training that, and then not just like training them in the same way like someone like I would be trained, me or someone else in the indies would be training, where we're training alongside like a 9 to 5 job. We're trying to get in gym schedules around this. We're trying to do meal prep around our existing lives. I think the idea of basically bringing in these people who are already incredible athletes, who are already incredibly coachable, and like I said, have those raw materials, and having them basically their full-time job is now dedicated to learning the craft and becoming a wrestler. And like all of them aren't going to succeed, but if you have that small percentage, they're just going to be incredible. And like Tiffany Stratton, I think is an excellent example of that. When the people talk about how quickly she's picked stuff up and how good she's gotten, and it's like, yeah, she's I can't remember how like Division Ones and stuff work, but they were talking about someone who was like the highest level, like competitive, like gymnastics and stuff. So she's already got like that coachability, the physicality, and she's doing all these incredible things that you don't often, that so many that you so often just don't see, and look so impressive. That I think it definitely like paid off long term. Like you can see so many like future stars coming out of that brand right now. So many people you can see headlining WrestleMania that, as much as I loved the previous NXT, you perhaps couldn't see doing that within the WWE mold, for better or for worse. The people they have coming through now, like exactly the kind of people WWE are looking for, and exactly the kind of people that work within like the WWE system.
No, of course, absolutely. I mean, they're all very talented, and I honestly think people like Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams and Braun Breaker, they're going to be definitely WrestleMania main eventers in the future, because they've just got it. They have got it, style, performance. They get it to a T, and I think that's what's such a great thing about NXT. It's still a great learning opportunity for wrestlers to learn and develop themselves. Now, obviously, we did touch upon a wee bit there. Is obviously the Wednesday Night War was with AEW, and AEW's been killing it right now. Obviously they had All In, then All Out, then they've had Wrestle Dream, and at the end, I think everyone was pretty much shocked when Mr. Adam Copeland came out and came to the company. And I mean, first of all, the way I like to describe wrestling now is fluid. People can go wherever they want and do whatever they want to do. Jay to WWE, Adam Copeland to AEW. I mean, I want to know, Freddie, for yourself, Adam Copeland in another company. It's kind of surreal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it feels weird just calling him Adam Copeland for one. That's going to take some. That's going to take some getting used to. But I think it's exciting though, because it's just that thing of, you have so many people that he can face now, so many people can interact with, and just hearing that, I think I think you know me. So you think you know me? Sorry, hearing that you think you know me just send in AEW did just send like chills down my spine. Edge was like one of my favorite wrestlers when I first got into it. I was devastated when he retired. Like was one of the saddest moments for me in wrestling, full stop. And then I remember being watching the Royal Rumble in like a sports bar in Manchester the year he returned. We already like had a miserable start to the evening, because I believe that was the same Rumble where Brock Lesnar ran through like 15 people.
Yeah. Until Scotsman Drew saved the day, because the Scotsmans always love to save the day.
And we all lost our minds when that happened as well. Like, in hindsight, that's one of my favorite Royal Rumbles ever, despite the fact that I was miserable for the first half of it. But I think that's just being truly invested in the story. And then when Edge came back, me and just remember losing my mind, and everyone else around me losing it. and actually been like such a big, amazing moment. And if you look at like what he's done in WWE since coming back, he had this incredible return at the Royal Rumble. He won a Rumble. He's main evented WrestleMania, Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania against Balor. He's done all this like amazing stuff since he's come back. And so the idea of like seeing him go into another company now, facing all of these people that a few years ago, the idea of him even interacting with would have been crazy. I think what I'm even more excited for, even the matches, is just hearing him on the mic with people, hearing him interact with some of the great talkers they got there, some of the great heels they got there. Off the top of my head, someone like Switchblade, Jay White comes to mind. Like imagining seeing the two of them having like a face down in a ring, is it just the sheer like volume of opportunities just blows my mind. And with something like that as well, you can tell it's a decision he's made because he's passionate about it. He truly believes he can do a lot of good things there, and he's excited for it. And I feel like that's something that's really going to come out. He's not someone who went there because he had no other options. He went there because he needed to, or he didn't. He's someone who he didn't need to. He doesn't like need this. And I think that's kind of what makes it more exciting for me. Is like it's something he's going to make the most of and really make something exciting. And again, just seeing him interact with Christian again, and then when Christian's on this, honestly, it's just possibly at the run of his career, character-wise, seeing them interact again is just such an exciting thing.
Absolutely. I mean,
but yeah, I mean that's the exciting world of wrestling. I mean, you mentioned it earlier as well. That fluidity, seeing like Jade Cargill go in the opposite direction, seeing what she's going to do in WWE. It's going to be amazing too. It's one of the really exciting things about sort of the wrestling world we live in now, and I can't wait to see what comes of it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always great, talent are getting paid and having a good time. That's the main thing we want as fans for the end of the day, is just to see them do well and be happy. I mean, Christian as well. Christ, man, he's been on a run in himself. I fear the day that a Dynamite happens on Father's Day, because I feel like he'll go absolutely nuclear. But obviously, Adam and Christian have history. And I want to know, when these two eventually meet up again, when do you think it should happen, Freddie? Should it happen at a Double or Nothing, kind of like their big one, or when AEW come back for Wembley next year at All In?
I think Wembley All In next year might be a little bit too late. I feel like the heat is there right now. I think if they were going to do anything at All In, I think I'd want to see the reunion there. I'd want to see Edge has pulled Christian out of the darkness, and that's where like they have this one final match or start one final run together. I think that's what I'd want to see by the time we get to All In. Or maybe something else. I'm not a booker. There could be even more amazing things in stock for them. That's just off the top of my head. The amount of times I've walked in and said, "Oh man, it'd be great if this happened," and something even better happened. So I think I'd kind of want to see them clash maybe towards the end of the year, maybe a little bit late, maybe start next. But sometimes I think you've got to strike while the iron's hot, and I think right now the iron is blistering. So I think
that's a wordsmith
there's steps in between. Give them the chance to work. With give him maybe a match with Luchasaurus to tide it over. Maybe give him a match with Nick Wayne. Let him work with like some of the younger up and coming guys before we immediately throw him in for this. Give it that time. But I don't think I'd want to wait as long as All In. And I think there's things we can do there that are equally exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, Edge and Christian reuniting will definitely be a very historic moment. But obviously, you can't talk about Edge and Christian without talking about the Hardys, who are in AEW, and the Dudleys, who have reunited in Impact. I mean, imagine here, Freddie, we could get these three tag teams back in the ring again.
I didn't know about the Dudleys there. I'd actually missed that announcement. Even if I feel at this day and age, I don't even need like a match between them. Sometimes in wrestling, I don't think you always need that. Even just them all ended up in the ring together through some means, maybe there's been some like cluster, something happens, somehow they've all ended up to get some. I think I would just need the moment. I think the moment would almost be enough for me. I don't need them all. At this stage in like all of their careers, it's like what we kind of know them for with those ladder matches and everything. They don't need to put their bodies on the line like that anymore to give us something special.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if they try to give us something that almost like replicates it, you'd be comparing it to those previous moments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You could say like, oh, they've had the triple threat, but like it wasn't nearly as like great as watching like these tag matches back there. I think, I don't think we need the match. Sometimes you just need like that one special moment at a time you don't expect. I think that can, if anything, be just as impactful sometimes. Wrestling doesn't always need to be these big, crazy 30-minute matches. Sometimes it is just like those single moments, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, if those three teams in the ring again, that's like a thumbnail for a YouTube video. That's a poster. That's selling everything because it's just going to be such an iconic moment. And obviously, I want to touch one thing on Adam Copeland as well. One thing that shocked me of anything, he came out to Metalingus. I was fully expecting like a Mikey Ruckus, kind of a tribute song, but then he was Metalingus, rated R superstar. I want to know for Adam Copeland and himself having that kind of connection to his past as Edge. Do you think that's quite important for him?
I don't think I could. I personally don't think I could speak for him myself on that. I think I kind of imagine it has to be. He's come out to that so many times, and coming out in a different company, like to a different song. Yeah, I'd have to imagine I would make him feel make it feel more alien to him. But I think hearing that music in AEW, I think it was a big part of what made it so surreal, what kind of gave those goosebumps. Because it is so iconic to him. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it's up there with maybe like the most iconic theme songs of all time. Definitely of his era. So I think, I know for like us as fans, they probably would have felt like there was something missing there. Mm-hmm. Like I imagine people still would have actually lost their minds. You think me would have been enough. But you would have seen on Twitter people being like, "Oh, I wish he'd come out to Metalingus. I wish that he'd." It's a part of that character, I think, and I think it would have felt like something's missing. Wouldn't have undermined it. Ultimately, seeing Adam Copeland Edge in AEW is something so incredible unto itself. But yeah, it would have felt a little weird. I think it would have made it a bigger adjustment. But actually having that music, I think it just feels right, Yeah. He could come out anywhere, that music, and you'd be like, yeah. Edge, it doesn't matter if you want to call him Edge or Adam Copeland, you'd be like, yeah, that's, who he is. Like that, it feels right with him.
Absolutely. And I think music is very important to like a presentation of a wrestler. Metalingus for Adam Copeland, Cult of Personality for Punk, Kenny Omega with Battle Cry. I think music is just so important because it can convey a feeling or a connection of how a character is progressing and evolving. So I want to know from yourself, Freddie, besides Metalingus, I know you probably love the song, what's your top 3 wrestling themes?
That's a really hard one. So, all right. So obviously taking Metalingus out, because that would have definitely been in there. I mean, that probably would have been number 1. Top three. Got to put Shawn Michaels in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that song just, again, in terms of like a song that just like lasted forever with him and just fit him so perfectly, like you couldn't imagine him coming out to anything else now. So I definitely would put that on there. This is really hard to narrow down, if I'm honest.
The mind's going, the whole jukebox is going through like a catalogue.
I've got it in my head because there's like 2 kinds. It's like, well, what do I actually listen to as like a song? Mm-hmm. And then there's what's just so like iconic for the wrestler. because like for example, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like the glass shattering, like part of me is tempted to put that in there, but I don't think I will because once that glass shatters, I'm not as fussed about the rest of the song. I think I'm going to put Moxley's Wild Thing in there.
Oh, banger.
Because that's a great song, and I think it really kind of added like a bit of extra kind of like charm to him as a character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know a lot of people said like I know there's a lot of people who kind of prefer like his old music, but that was kind of generic, rough, barbed wire brawlery kind of music. I feel like that just adds a bit of extra to the character. I think maybe Final Countdown, Bryan Danielson.
Truly a banger. I mean, expensive as shit, what Tony Khan said.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not used often. That's why it was a hard one to put in there. But I think I kind of quite like the juxtaposition between like that arguably like cheesy song, maybe. I mean, if you think like other use of it in media, I don't know if you watched Arrested Development.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and obviously the way they use it for Joe in there. I mean, for anyone watching this who's not watched the show, like essentially a terrible magician dancing around the stage to the final countdown, like this big ridiculous, arguably cheesy song. Somehow when he comes out to it, feels like this epic. And that, like, honestly, the fact that him using that song just completely flipped that entire song in its head for me kind of makes me feel like, okay, there's something special about that.
No,
I think those are like my personal favorites. I'm not sure I'd say they're the best of all time, but they're personal favorites.
Hey, personal favorites can be opinionated. People can have their own ones. I mean, I think they're all banger choices as well. But something I want to touch upon as well, underrated themes. Like people who've got wrestlers who've got good songs as themes, but people maybe don't appreciate them enough. Like immediately one comes to mind is Alex Riley. His theme I thought was an absolute banger.
Is that the "Say It to My Face" one?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. I mean, the fact that I remember it more than I remember most of what he did. Please don't.
So I want to know what kind of themes, like free themes. Sorry, we'll apologize to you, pal. You can say it to our face, But I want to know, Freddie, free themes that you think are underrated that people maybe don't appreciate enough.
I think Lita's is one I'm a big fan of.
Oh, okay, good.
That's a solid sort of Attitude Era kind of theme. Unless you start using it in the Ruthless Aggression. I kind of get my timelines muddled up there, whereas I wasn't watching it at the time. So definitely think Lita's in there. I guess like a lesser. I feel like there's a few good ones in Impact back in the day, and in TNA. So I'm just trying to run through some of those in my head.
AJ Styles,
the Motor City Machine Guns theme. That was great, but I think that sometimes it's hard to separate like your love for the song with your love for the actual wrestler or team. And I think so I think I'm going to go with those two for now because I'm struggling to think.
Okay.
Big fan of RVD Walk. I think that one kind of falls by.
Whoa. I
think that one kind of goes under the radar a bit, purely on the basis of one of a kind being his theme in WWE and that being so like being a great theme. But I have that soft spot for Walk and seeing him come out to that recently in AEW. Probably the first time the license for it has actually been paid as well. That was really cool. So I think RVD's Walk, Lita, and I'm gonna give it to the Motor City Machine Guns one for now because I got a lot of love for that, and a lot of those great old TNA impact, like the TNA themes, fly under the radar.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, fellas, definitely give them all a listen, and have them onto your gym playlist because I think you'll do well from having them on the playlist.
Actually, you know what? Scrap the Motor City Machine Guns because I've just realized what my truly underrated one is from TNA. Do you remember a wrestler by the name of Crimson?
No, was he like Black Rain kind of? Was he friends with him?
No, so he was kind of like big muscly dude, like red, like short red hair. He was introduced against Jeff Jarrett as the brother of Amazing Red.
Okay.
So like Amazing Red, like I can't remember he lost or beat Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett was like, "Tell you what, get your little brother out here next week. I'll beat him as well. Go on, get the little guy out here." The whole thing, like he was sitting on his knees, like back to the stage. This massive dude comes out. I don't know what he's doing now. I think he might still be wrestling in NWA. He didn't really go on to do much. I think he had a brief tag title run with Matt Morgan. But I just remember like back at the time being like a really big fan of him because he had a great theme song and one or two really cool moves. And sometimes that's all you need to hook in 14-year-old Freddie Idle.
Well,
So that's my final hidden gem. If anyone finds Crimson's old theme music in TNA.
well, I'm definitely adding it now. I'm going to do my homework and research. I'm getting right onto the YouTube and finding this. I don't care if it's in 280p or 480p or anything like that. I will find it and give it a listen because that's my goal now. I'm going to make that my mission.
Mate, it's 8-bit at this point.
Oh, God. Well, banger at the end of the day, my friend, Eddie. Banger at the end of the day. Now, Freddie, obviously, let's go back to you, my friend, because I know you train at Square One Academy, and I've had many that have been there, from Adonis Payne to Tig to Tony Sin to the new champion for the as Square One, Harrison Leon, all great guys and, great thing going on. With Square One in itself, Freddie, that learning environment, I've heard so many things. I want to hear from yourself. How beneficial is that environment for learning?
I think it's been great. I think part of the reason it's been so fantastic is just the culture there is just unmatchable. Everyone wants everyone else to succeed so badly. I don't think there's anyone there who's trying to like climb over somebody else. It's so collaborative. It's so supportive. And I think ultimately like that's what wrestling needs to be in general. The better we all get, the better wrestling is. The better I get, the better you, the better I get, the better you get, the better match we'll have together. I want, obviously I want to get better. I want to keep doing this. I want to improve, but we all want to do that alongside each other there. And I think that's something that really makes a difference. On top of that, kind of just the opportunities to keep working and improving, and there are great. Obviously, like the unlimited access to the ring, being able to use that and get comfortable there is obviously great. The Square One shows as well, being able to sort of come up through those, sort of try and figure out kind of what works there, and having such like a loyal, fan base and that, because those shows are now considering these like academy shows as well. They'll sell like 150 people a show. Having that kind of environment to debut, to sort of debut in, get the opportunity to work with people more experienced at the start and improve. The ties to the private hire side of things as well. So I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know if the others have mentioned Hugo Bloom, who runs Square One, who runs UBW. He also runs like a private hire business as well. So county fates, events, stuff like that. So being able to wrestle on those shows and just get way more reps in the ring in front of the crowds than I normally would have been able to in my first couple of years of wrestling has been invaluable as well. That's given me like the opportunity to try things that to try and improve crowd work, try and improve on little things in like less high pressure environments. Having Paul Ash as well, being a part of the Square One Academy, of his years of experience and his coaching has also been invaluable. That's something I really appreciate about him as well, is he's someone who you can go to with an idea, and either if he doesn't like it or he doesn't think it works, he will never just give you a straight up, no, it's not good. He will always say to you like, okay, well, here's the issue with this. Here's why it might not work. Here, and you come away from that having like learned a lot more. Or if it's something that needs tweaking, he can give like good input. And even better is he's the kind of person who also say, well, let's try it. That could what. So I think having such good like guiding kind of coach for everyone in there, coming up through there, and that side of things is great too. It's just such like a great kind of place to come up through on so many sides. And I think, the mission of that place, the mission of Hugo Bloom starting up that place was to make that entry point of wrestling more accessible for more people. And I think that's something that's really done. And I think you can really see by like the talent that have kind of come up through there, and also just like the talent waiting in the wings as well. It's like some people who you can see like, oh, when you sort of like debut in like a year's time, or when you sort of, or when you start to get momentum, you're going to be doing fantastic things. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a real place for the next few years of wrestling, where you can see a lot of people on the scene who have come through there, who've got experience working there, that who are going to be saying a lot of similar things. It's a fantastic place, and obviously I wouldn't be wrestling without it now.
Absolutely, man. I mean, just seeing from everyone's, Instagram and everything, and just posting pictures, and the sense of joy and creativity it gets in places just seems so real and passionate. And I love to see. And also, they have the Square One Championship. Harrison Leon's defending it against Tony Sin in a coffin match. I mean, it's going to be interesting seeing itself. I want to know, Freddie, say if you got a chance at the championship, but you got to pick a stipulation for it, any stipulation for your chance to get the Square One Championship, which stipulation would you want and why?
Am I facing Harrison Leon for it?
Well, let's say it could be Harrison, could be Tony. We don't know. The coffin
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, coffin match does favor Tony. He's a spooky boy. So, if I wanted to win that title, and I would say, all right, well, what's a match I know Freddie Idle can out wrestle anyone in Square One in? That'd be a submission match.
Oh,
because if there's one thing I know I can do, there's one thing I know my A game can lie in, something I've not really got a chance to show a lot of yet, is I'm a damn good technical wrestler.
Okay.
So if I'm picking a stipulation that favors me, that's where it's going.
Well, Brian Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr., eat your hearts out, boys, because the real submission specialist is coming in the wings with champions. Now, obviously, for any women wrestling, it's a personal thing I love. It's custom championships. Jay Briscoe's Ring of Honor, Cena's Spinner, MJF's Burgundy thing with the AEW Championship. Not a big fan, right? I don't like the strap. I prefer the black.
I personally love it. I personally love the Triple B.
Well, fair points. But I want to know, Freddie, say if you won the championship, the Square One Championship, how would you put your own little Freddie Idle twist on it?
All right. I'm sorry. We have a little think on that. You'll be seeing a lot. Definitely be taking that to a black strap for one. But I think let's punk that thing up a bit. Let's maybe stick some like studs, like some spiked studs on there. Let's maybe stick some chains coming off of there. Let's make that thing, let's make that thing feel a little bit like punky. Let's make it a little bit more rock and roll.
Ooh, okay, but maybe put on some like guitar strings up and down the strap and all that. You could
maybe
play
a
that.
little something like that. Definitely, like a lot of my kind of like style in terms of like the gear I wear, in terms of the kind of look, definitely comes from the man we mentioned earlier, Mr. Adam Copeland Edge. So definitely a bit of that kind of air about it. Kind of messy, kind of punk kind of look to it. Don't want neat, symmetrical. Let's make it as wild as we can.
Oh, well, I dare to think for Square One, when you win that championship, they're going to be breaking the bank for you, my friend, and getting you that true custom belt. I mean, hey, I feel like the replicas will be flying. You'll be making bank soon enough, my friend, because they will be beautiful. Now, obviously, within the UK in itself, we've got so many great things going on. Scotland, we've got great things. Wales, Northern Ireland, and England, truly thriving right now. I feel like we're in another British wrestling revolution of just so much great things. And for yourself, Freddie, being a British wrestler and seeing these thrive, seeing everywhere doing well, what does that mean to you, seeing the UK wrestling scene thrive?
Well, I think it's exciting. It's like we touched on earlier with AEW being a thing. The more places there are for people to work, the more fans that come into attendance, the more opportunities there are, the bigger the scene grows, is better for everyone. I love wrestling. I'm passionate about it. The only thing I think is better than wrestling on TV or watching wrestling is live wrestling. There's something, I think wrestling as like an art form, when it's live, especially, truly sort of resonates with like the most like innate and like fundamental parts of us in terms of excitement, that gut reaction to things. The idea of like a pop or like being worked, I think draws on something so, I don't know if I want to say like primal or like base. It's just such like a outward reaction of joy all the time, and seeing more of that across the UK, seeing more people being bought into it, seeing more people get to experience that is always going to be an amazing thing. So I think wrestling is the most exciting live art form to me, and seeing that grow is nothing but an amazing thing. And I can't wait to see, it's like you said, seeing this growth, seeing the more opportunities for people. I can't wait to see what that becomes. I can't wait to see what all the people around me are going to do, these peers coming up through square one, seeing other teams or like people I've met in other promotions start to do these cool, amazing things. On a personal level, like it's amazing to see people you care about, people are fantastic in the ring, fantastic people getting these amazing opportunities, knowing that you can work to that too. It gives that growth of British wrestling gives me even more goals of what I want to do. It gives me even more things that seem like feasible now that might not have been before. And from like a fan's perspective, more wrestling is always amazing. Wrestling is the best. Wrestling is the best thing. It's amazing. It's hard to put into words. I think, you're a wrestling fan yourself. When you're actually at a show and you get that pop, it's not something you think about. It's not something that you're like, oh, that was great for this reason. It's just this innate expression of like amazement and joy. And seeing an art form that does that grow is just fantastic.
Well, Freddie, my friend, I think you said that to the T, and that is very, very real. But Freddie Idle, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Soul Sessions. But before we go, I usually ask like the dream scenario or anything, dream title, dream match. But I want to pose to you, Freddie, dream booker. I want you to become a booker right now, my friend. I want to propose two situations for you. We know we've got All In coming back, but we might be getting a WrestleMania here in the UK. So I want to propose to you, get your dream booking hat on right now. I want you to book the main event of WrestleMania here in the UK and the next All In. So let's go with WrestleMania first. What would be your
WrestleMania main event in the UK?
Yeah.
That's a hard one, because obviously part of me is like, do I want to bring in UK talent? You've got Drew McIntyre there waiting to do things. You've got Sheamus as well, is obviously beloved here. But I think that spot's got to go to someone who has been such a major part of the UK scene throughout the 2010s. Somebody who, you've got to imagine it's a matter of time until their main event in WrestleMania anyway. Someone who will be new and fresh to that spot, and someone who the UK fans are going to 100% want to see there, and that's Gunther.
Oh, you're absolutely right, my friend. Him in main event. But who would his opponent be? And would this be for the World Championship?
I think it'd have to be for a World Championship. I'm definitely kind of in that sense of like the main event of a pay-per-view should almost always be a title, and especially an event like WrestleMania. It's hard to pick his opponent, because I think it would need to be someone who's also had a pretty great championship run. I think it depends on what year that would be. Because I'm in my head, like, has Reigns lost the title by this point? Who's our current champ? Honestly, I think I could take him against anyone, but I think realistically, somebody like Rollins would probably be great in there. Someone who you're going to get a reliably good match out of. And I think you kind of want to see someone who feels like already a big established star against someone who's on the verge of becoming that. So I think you would need someone. I think Rollins would probably be my pick. I think that's somebody who I feel Walter winning that would feel like Walter. Sorry, old habits die hard. I feel like Gunther winning that would feel like Gunther elevating to that final level. You know, you could put him against. You know, you could say you'd have an amazing match against someone like Tyler Bate. They've had amazing matches before. Say same for someone like Dunn, Dragunov, and that would be an incredible match. But I feel like as a moment of Gunther reaching that level, you need someone who's already been there for a while. And that to me, I think is Rollins. And hey, double jeopardy here. If you can keep the IC title on him that long without it feeling boring, let's go back to some old Warrior Hogan days.
Ooh.
IC title versus world title. We've got too many titles to get them all on the card anyway. Let's. I think that would be my pick for a British Mania main event: Gunther Rollins, IC title versus whatever world title Rollins is holding.
Man, spicy matchbook in there, Freddie, mate. God damn, that's gonna make Ticketmaster crash just from the thought of it. Poor Ticketmaster. But now, obviously, All In. What would be your dream All In event?
Okay. I think one person I probably want to stick on that, just purely as like a fan, top British wrestler who missed it last year. Probably got to put Zack Sabre Jr. on there.
Oh, okay, good. And would this be a rematch with Bryan or Copeland, or who are you thinking?
I don't know. I don't know if I want necessarily a rematch with Bryan, because as much as I love, so I haven't actually watched all the Wrestle Dream yet. I'm about halfway through it. I've not got up to the match yet, and I am desperately excited for it. As much as they're two of my favorite wrestlers, I love that technical wrestling style. I don't know that it's always the best style in a major stadium.
Okay.
I would worry that kind of some of the intricacies might get lost, and I don't know if that's the best event for a match like that. So I think I'd want to see Zack Sabre Jr. healing it up against someone with quite a different style. I think maybe him and Orange Cassidy, I think it would be a good match. We've seen them compete together before. They've got good chemistry. Maybe a match for
Ospreay.
Zack Sabre Jr.'s holding like the still got the New Japan TV title at the time. If he's got another title over there, because let's face it, that guy is going to be regularly is going to have gold around his waist for most of his career. So I think that I'd probably put that one on there. I think I'd like to see one thing I kind of wanted at All In this year that they didn't do, but I'm not too disappointed because it's still an amazing event. Was I would have liked to have seen some sort of obviously AEW like to go to that Casino Battle Royal kind of type match. I would have liked to have seen maybe something like that to try and incorporate some of the talent on the British scene right now. It was exciting. One thing I quite enjoyed before the show when they did that little contract signing with Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs was the faces that you saw behind them as the good old fashioned wrestling security guards. You know, your Leon Slaters, your man like Darius, Simon Miller. But it'd be great to see some of those guys kind of get like an opportunity on that stage, even if it is just in this battle royal, big 20-man battle royal, maybe sticking like five or six guys from the UK in there. I think would be something I'd love to see. Because I think there's so much amazing talent right now that I think would be able to thrive at that. Would not just thrive, would just do fantastically at that level. So seeing them get the opportunity, I think would be great. I think past that, I think I'd like to. I think one thing AEW does excel at is I think they're the best at doing things like trios matches, big multi-man matches. I think the frantic style of AEW suits that. So I definitely want to see a few of those like we did this year, get a fair few people on the card. But if we're looking at like big main events, we're talking about like the title scene. I think it'd be great to see Tony Storm at that level. Again, someone else who's kind of come up through the UK, someone who people have been seeing wrestling here for years. Seeing her go into a major title match, I think that'd be fantastic. And I'd love to see her, I think, wrestle. I'm trying to think who's coming up in AEW right now, who by that time would be in a good place. I wouldn't mind seeing Statlander in a women's title match on that stage. She's someone who I definitely missed it all in this year. One of my favorite wrestlers on that brand. So I think maybe I'd put those two together. As for the men's title, MJF still in that match. I don't want him to lose that belt anytime soon. I think maybe MJF and Jay White.
Okay. Wow. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't say MJF and Copeland. I mean, that would have been a real tough one for you, I think.
See, I'm not used to Adam. I'm not used to Adam Copeland in AEW. I completely I was thinking right, who's in AEW? I'm thinking but yeah, no, you're right. And then a tag match: Adam Copeland and Christian against either FTR or the Bucks. I think.
My God, it
One
is
of the
exciting
greatest
time.
teams historically against, I think, possibly arguably the two best teams in the world today. Hard to pick between them. I'm personally lean more in the direction of FTR, just to the style of wrestling I like. But I think those two teams for me right now are just the two of the most consistent, amazing tag teams out there. So either one of those I would happily take against a reunited Edge and Christian.
Yeah,
so I think those are probably my big kind of staples. And as long as Takeshita's on the card somewhere as well, because right now he's someone who every time I watch wrestle, I have my mind absolutely blown. He's someone who I look at and think, I don't understand how you could be that good a wrestler. In fact, hell, let's put him against someone on the British scene. Let's just stick him on there to have a banger match against someone who I think would thrive on a bigger stage. Say Takeshita against Cara Noir.
That is a good one.
Two hard-hitting boys, and can you imagine a Cara Noir entrance in Wembley?
Oh God, spectacular! That's all that's coming to my mind is spectacular, mate. I mean, I'm pretty sure if Meltzer's hearing this right now, he's ready to give you your 5 stars. You've been pleased, Meltzer, mate.
See, I like to think so. I think those are, like I said, I definitely would. I think my main thing is I would want to see a little touch that British talent in there. I feel like like you said earlier, British wrestling's hitting such an amazing level right now. There's so many exciting people wrestling. There's so many people at that level just below it who are ready to step up to that sort of Progress Rev Pro kind of level. So I think given them, you give the people who are already up there an even bigger platform. Everyone else is going to get even better to try and fill those spaces. I think something like that would be an amazing thing.
Oh, absolutely, indeed. I love the idea of a casino battle royale, but filled with UK talent. From the men's side, women's side, just getting that chance to feature. Before we finish up here, Freddie, I want to know what kind of talent would you love to see featured in that to get that next step.
So I think in terms of people who I think, I don't think any of these are going to be anything anyone would want to argue with. I want to see the people right now who I think are absolutely killing it on the British scene, not just in terms of what they're doing in ring, but what they're doing with in terms of bringing out their personality and character. I think man like Darius definitely one. I feel over the past couple of years, since lockdown, since live wrestling has returned, he's someone who has just been getting better and better, more exciting every time you see him in the ring. So I definitely want to put him on there. Obviously, like I mentioned Cara earlier, I'd love to see him feature in a match, but he's someone who I think is just incredible. Can't really have a British wrestling show without Spike Trivet.
Mm-hmm.
He's someone who, again, I think every time I see him out there, he brings so much to a card. Just the level of heat that guy brings is incredible, and I think he's definitely someone who would deserve that shot. Gene Money, I'd probably put in there.
Oh, okay, good.
Because
call.
that's someone who I know every time I see him, I am so entertained. I feel wrestling isn't always about having the single best match on the card, and Gene is someone who can have fantastic matches. He can go out there and he can go. He's excellent, but he's someone who I feel no matter kind of what he's doing, he's always finds a way to make it entertaining and make it fun. He's just got that kind of range to him. I think that's excellent. And I'm going to round it off with an even 5. unless I'm already at 6. I actually lost count, but let's say I haven't. I think final one I have to put Charles Crowley.
Yeah, no, that's a very good call. I mean, imagine his entrance with like 80,000 people just chanting twat. That's historic right there.
Yeah. And also, like, coming up through Square One and UBW, he's someone who, like, we've all kind of like seen, we all know through that, and he's such an incredible and truly weird wrestler. And again, someone who over like the past couple of years, I feel like we've all seen evolve, not just in terms of how great he is in ring, but even what was already fantastic character work and a fantastic performer. We've seen pretty much take over the scene. So I feel like he's someone I definitely want to see on that kind of platform as well.
Wow, absolutely. I mean, all great names. And then obviously, Freddie, you'll be there as well, and you'll be getting the win because you're the guest of the show.
Straight over the rope, walk in, Santino'd out. I'll take it.
Well, hey, you'll be in the history books. It's in your record. I'll take it. I think it's the best way to do it. But Freddie Idle, my friend, thank you for appearing here on the Soul Sessions. Now, folks, obviously, if you've loved what you heard of Freddie, don't worry. I know in modern day, people are lazy. You're probably watching this episode while playing the PlayStation or something. So I'm going to put Freddie's Instagram link up the description of this video. You can click that, follow him, and see the Rockstar's journey as well. Well, Freddie, my friend, thank you for appearing here on the Soul Sessions. Now, usually I would say the whole like, subscribe thing, but YouTube's been around since 2005. I think you know what to do.
People should know what they're doing by now. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, if I still have to say it, I mean, YouTube's not been doing their job correctly. I mean, come on.
Can I say it? Because I've not got to do it before. I've not. Can I say it?
Go ahead. I will let you be the guest.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell thing, subscribe to Soul Sessions. That was exciting. Thank you. I see why people do it. It rolls off the tongue.
Well, I'm just going to have that clip now and just play at the end of every episode now. So that I'm just going to lie back, relax, whiskey in hand. I don't have to say anymore. The information has been provided.
Now, then, forever.
Exactly. See? History maker. Well, folks, thank you again. And stay tuned always for more Soul Sessions.